Would you like to reduce your net fleet fuel spend by 10 to 23%? Could you use that money in other areas in your company while reducing your carbon footprint at the same time? Click the link below and learn more. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Freight Executive Insights. I'm Mike Vincent. I am not the executive with any insights. My good friend Curtis Garrett, he's an executive. You be the judge on his insights or not. No, seriously, he's a good dude. And he is CEO at Rate Hero and this cool thing called ULTL, which ILTL and he LTLs to ULTL. I just made that up. You can use that, Curtis, if you want.
Hold on. Let me write that down. Say that again.
It's so freaking original. I should be a marketing guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I think we all are inherently, but some of us do it better just the way you do in your sleep, I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm just a walking marketing piece of marketing. It's unbelievable.
He's a piece of marketing.
Yes, I'm a big piece of marketing. Anyways, so I met you at when I was at Freightways. You were on What the Truck.
Yeah, that was
back in the day.
We did a couple like virtual shows together, probably in 2019, 2020, and then I came down to co-host a show with you guys 2022.
Yeah,
and that's right. Where we met in person. Yeah.
When we were allowed, that was just after we were allowed to be on air without masks. Actually, that's not true. If we were in the same room, we had to have masks on. But if you were on air, you didn't need to have a mask.
Yeah.
Nothing. Just like if you were eating, like if you're in line to get into the restaurant, you need a mask. But if you're at your table, you don't need a mask.
Yeah, I mean, there's limits to everything, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. Made perfect sense. Enough of that, dude. What do you want to start with? You want to start with Rate Hero or you want to start with ULTL? ULTL is pretty.
Let's start with ULTL. So over the years, I started my career at Old Dominion, spent 8 years there. Got a good dose of a lot of different parts of the industry. Started on the dock in Columbus, Ohio. Started, driving a forklift, just learning from the ground up, and then eventually jumped over into the driving role. Initially line haul. So I was going out and back, typically 1 or 2 nights. I wasn't doing any long haul stuff, but I would go up to the East Coast and the Mid-South and, kind of the big terminals that were within a day or two's distance from Columbus.
Yeah.
And then I noticed this guy on the dock that was walking around with a tape measure and a camera and looked like he was just doing some interesting stuff, kind of poking around, looking in trailers, opening crates and that
W&I, kind of. Was he doing W&I?
Yeah. Yeah. So I got talking to him. I think he's still there. He's a great guy, Jeff. He's probably, as far as I know, he's still there in the Columbus terminal. I won't give his last name just so shippers don't put any hits out. But he kind of taught me the W&I. He basically handed me the NMFC classifications book, all the rates, tariffs, and it was learn it or, get out kind of thing. It was a little overwhelming. I remember preparing for the interview, and that was the first time, this was 2 years into working at the company, and it was the first time I'd ever heard of a freight class or anything. Because
why would you unless you're actually worried about it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the operations piece is so specific and focused and such a difficult, complex part of the business to pull off. I hear things now like there's so much credit given to the different terminals at these carriers where it's like, they're targeting 3PL business and they're doing this. I can guarantee you they're not. They don't know who's paying the bill, what the class is, what cost it's going at. They're just moving that stuff down the dock and trying to fill up the right trailers and get those doors closed. And
they know if it's heavy or not. They know if it's dense or not, and they know if it'll break or not.
Yeah,
and they know where the labels are because they got to follow their ECE, eliminate checking error rules, and that's all they. The rest of it, they're worried about not overloading the kingpin, burying the weight in the belly. All that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, they get to know the physical freight better than most people know their spouses. Like they do a little push test and a sniff test, and they know the entire DNA of that shipment.
Yep.
On where to load it and how it needs to scale out in the trailer and everything. But yeah, I got into W&I, and that kind of was the big hook for me, just to get, to stay in the industry long term. Got a peek at kind of the pricing, the business side of it, but still one foot in the operations. And all to this day, everything I've done since then, and learned a ton since then. But those 3.5 years in W&I at Old Dominion were the steepest learning curve I had in the LTL business, because you're right there in the action, but you're not blinders on like the ops managers that are just concerned with getting the freight loaded and schedules closed. You're kind of like front row seats at the hockey game or the football game or whatever, where you see it, but you kind of have a little bit of a barrier to be able to like process it, internally and kind of figure out what's going on, and then go into the office and input your measurements and look up the different pricing agreements and tariffs and figure out, oh, okay, here's what we charge for certain accessorials. Why is it different by shipper, by account? And I just basically became obsessed with, I could look at an average trailer, a pup trailer we were loading for line haul routes. There's maybe 15 to 30 shipments on each trailer, depending on, the size and weight of each shipment. And I just became infatuated with, how do you separate all this out to know like who's profitable and who's not, like what's desirable, what's not.
Contribution to margin, right?
Yeah, because you have all these activity driven costs, and then you have certain fixed costs, and then you have, I've always said, this was something I said, actually, I think I came up with it on the first show I did with you and Dooner, was, all the LTL costs go up, they roll up in either space, time, or risk. And whether you're looking at, pickup, delivery, cross-dock, administrative, credit, payment, pricing, everything, it doesn't matter. It's either some portion of space utilized, time, required to serve, and then risk from packaging, claims, payment, just all that stuff. So basically my that those dots connected, and they just kind of mind melded inside my head. And then I eventually was invited to come down to the corporate office, work under, one of the most amazing pricing and costing minds of the business, Todd Poland. He's been a really good mentor of mine, more so since I left the company. And we've stayed in touch over the years. He's helped me out a ton. And that was it. I was hook, line, and sinker, LTL student from that point on.
Yeah. It's such a complex business and so much different than truckload. I mean, my transition from 12 plus years in LTL to maritime LCL and then into final mile and then truckload, it just got progressively easier. It really did, right?
Yeah.
As long as it was legal and it wasn't oversized and it didn't overweight a van, truckload's easy, dude. I mean,
truckload, most of the time in truckload is spent thinking about when the truck's moving and basically, the lane or the direction it's going. Where LTL, we think more about when the truck is stopped and there's activities happening at pickup or delivery, cross-docking, obviously, and then really what goes on inside the trailer. Not as much, it really doesn't matter what's on a truckload. Like, as long as they're paying the rate from here to there, you could have a box or you could have 20 pallets. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Cube utilization is not exactly important in truckload. It just doesn't really matter.
Yep.
And in LTL, it's incredibly important, and it's incredibly important to understand that just filling out the cube is not necessarily the answer either, right? Because you gotta think about all the other stuff, right? So when you're pricing and you've got air on a lane, filling that air just because it's already there, so you can discount the cheap as hell. Nah, that's not necessarily true, because you got to think about where are you picking it up from, how hard is it to move it across the dock, and the delivery points, right? Is it taking people out of route, et cetera?
Yep. It's a giant puzzle, right? There's every little segment can be broken down, on the P&D side, from the distance and time involved from terminal to your first stop, first to second, second to third, kind of that whole loop. It's just a very systematized industry. So that just pulled me in, and then eventually led me to start Understand LTL. As it kept coming up in conversations, like he or she or that company, this company, they either do understand LTL or they don't. And so I decided to name a company called Understand LTL, which is kind of,
It's very cool.
shortened into ULTL, which I like your shtick there too. ULTL, ILTL, let's all LTL.
That's all LTL, bro.
Yeah. and that's been courses. We're doing events now. We're about to have our third live event, which is kind of a combination between the people, companies, and brain trust that you find at these huge freight conferences, but distilled down into a nice intimate group of like 40 to 50 people. I call it LTL summer camp. Basically, we get dropped off on Sunday, we get picked up on Tuesday afternoon, and we're just the whole 2 days, like we're moving as one unit, as a group. We're in sessions together. There's no breakouts. A lot of Q&A. So we'll do typically 20, 25 minutes of a presentation, and then 30 to 35 minutes of discussion, Q&A, questions. We have some tech demos this time. I'm really excited for this one. So that's about a two time a year cadence.
Cool.
In addition to the courses we still have, we're actually kind of a sneak peek here. We're working on an LTL simulator right now. Like if you ever grew up playing like Roller Coaster Tycoon or any of these games where you can like make decisions and kind of get your hands on the wheel, we're building a simulator for ULTL where you can be a shipping manager or a director of pricing at a 3PL hypothetically, and you're literally running RFPs. You're choosing carriers. We're going to have carrier happiness scores involved, customer happiness scores, performance scores, cost metrics. It's going to be amazing.
So you got to get the right freight mix in your terminals, the right lanes, get all your your service standards right, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
See, I used to play Zoo Tycoon, and that was fun.
Yeah, same sort of thing. I used to play some game. I don't know what it was called. One of my slightly rebellious friends as a kid, it was like you were like a drug dealer and you had to buy and sell the right drugs on the street. Same idea, right? It's the model of, running a business, buying, selling, making the right decisions, partnering with the right dealers or people. And so yeah, that's kind of where ULTL's headed.
LTL's tough. LTL's tough. I mean, if you were the single person doing it, once you learn the different things, there's so many moving parts, and timing of decisions it would be really hard in that game. But managing what other people are doing for you, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because you got all these sales reps that are running around your district or your division, whatever you're running, and they're all trying to make quota, right? But then there's this thing called contribution to margin or yield, right? And, the argument, there's no ugly freight, there's just poorly priced freight, right? Would always come up. Is that true or isn't that true? And I'll tell you what, if you're hauling certain things, like overhead door was one of my terminals accounts. And I don't care how you price that. It's just ugly damn freight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some things you just have to go into it knowing that it's by taking this type of profile on, it's going to basically kill the space on that trailer for everybody else. So you better price it for, exclusive use, essentially.
Exactly. Or try and do, full cubic capacity or something like that, or whatever, articles of extreme configuration, and try and prove that in a court of law, which is really hard to do.
Yeah. That's like, sounds like a good horror or science fiction movie, articles of extreme configuration.
Yeah. Well, it was a rule in the NMFC that most people didn't understand.
No. There's still those rough edges. I think there's, we've made a ton of progress in the last 10 years. But there's still, what I'm on a mission to solve is smooth the edges. We still have these big drops between class tiers, between overlength tiers, cubic capacity versus standard pricing.
Yeah.
And we just, LTL is a framework. And like you said, with all the people involved, it's all a game of managing incentives. Whether you're the local sales rep, you're the terminal manager, you're the dock worker, it really doesn't matter, who you are, where you fit in. It's this giant system of just aligning incentives and making sure that, big paddle or little paddle, we're all paddling in the same direction, essentially.
Right. Because it's difficult. I mean, and when you're in that as a manager or looking at it, and you start to, I mean, those were some of the eye openers for me as I got into higher levels and terminal manager and district and so on and so forth. You start to really get exposed, because I was totally operations and I did a lot of W&I, right? But the way they had it at Roadway Express, the way when I was in W&I and doing that, I got the stuff, put it together, but then it went into pricing, and pricing handled the rest of it, right? So I didn't have to follow it cradle to grave, kind of like you described.
Yeah.
And so I was removed still from the rating aspect of it. And I started to learn that quite well once you got into your own terminals, et cetera. So that's the fastest way really to change your OR, was to get the proper freight mix and rating in your terminal. It was usually that was the issue as far as moving any total type of needle in your OR. It wasn't operational. I mean, there are operational inefficiencies, but by and large, not enough to tank a company.
No, you're the right freight at the right price. Those are the inputs. Those are by far the heaviest weighted, variables in the LTL system. The operation, like, you have these different operational layers that those inputs kind of flow through, and the operational side is typically pretty standardized. You're unloading and loading trailers pretty much the same way. You're not, carriers will adjust based on volumes and different accounts that they, win or lose over the course of the year to their labor and their equipment pool and anything like that in a certain market. But it's all kind of a very standardized approach, and it needs to be, right. It's you can't customize your solution for every single customer, especially when you're getting, 1 pallet a week from this guy and then 300 a day from this other one over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I was there. So, or are you? Let me ask you this question this way: Are you purely looking at this from an education for the shipper and 3PL, or are you looking at this as consultation with actual LTL carriers, et cetera, understanding some of the systems in a more deeper manner?
Yeah, it's both, really. We, like, in the simulator itself, we're going to have different personas, depending on who the user is and what direction or perspective they need to learn from. They'll be able to choose whether they're a shipper, a 3PL, or a carrier. And then, like, same thing with our courses and content now. We have a partnership with one LTL carrier where any new sales rep they hire, specifically ones that are not from the industry, they send through our suite of courses now, just to kind of get them up to speed. But we typically, if I think to who reaches out to me personally through LinkedIn or wherever else, a lot of the times the most hungry for learning and knowledge and just kind of grappling the LTL system are the small to mid-sized 3PLs that know LTL is a gold mine. It's very scalable if you set it up right on the front end, but it's tough to, back your way into. So that's kind of where Rate Hero comes into place. We're basically attacking 3 specific points in the LTL life cycle. We're helping small to mid-sized 3PLs price, do bids, standardize their outputs to their customers so it can be, apples to apples and kind of digested, but in a way that's kind of highlighting and still customizing, taking advantage of the carrier's differences on their side with pricing, with tariffs, with regions, service points, all that. So there's the pricing side. We're building the Better BOL right now. And this is the first I've actually talked about this publicly. We're building a Rate Hero Better BOL, which will be a combination of both a better just, PDF to print out BOL, but it's going to be built to the specs of the standardized API EBOL call that's out there now. So So an easy lift, like I don't believe that, a shipper.
I could guess at who your partner is on developing that, but I'm going to save it for off the air because I'm probably right, and you probably don't want to say.
You might not be, and so I wouldn't want to correct you on the air. But
yeah, well, there's that too. There's that too.
It's more so with the carriers, right? Not all carriers are using this standardized call. A majority of them are now, but we're more dealing with just the carriers, and wherever they get that behind the scenes, that's up to them.
That's fantastic.
Pricing, BOL, and then we're also doing, invoice verification and audit services.
I got you.
If we can hit those 3 pillars, then we open up, to the carriers that want to engage with us, a huge potential gold mine, like I said, of a lot of good business that typically is just hard to wrangle, hard to organize. Right now, a carrier might get 80 to 90% of their bids in a given year from 3PLs, but they may only do 20 to 40% of their business with 3PLs. So that tells me that, one, they're getting a ton of, they're expending a lot of labor and time around pricing these opportunities that they don't see and may not even get feedback on. And then 2, that means that, outside of their large direct shipper accounts where they are doing a typical RFP process maybe every other year, there's a lot of other shippers in the mix there that they're pricing stuff just by a couple invoices or BOLs or a picture. It's a lot of like throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of them don't understand, so they're very conservative in their pricing, right? Or over conservative, so they lose shipments because they don't understand how it could really, and so you lose out on benefits, and they probably win some stuff that they really shouldn't have.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
as well, right?
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. Is the more a carrier has to guess with the pricing, the less aggressive they're going to be in the proposal that they give. Understandably, right?
Yeah, you better be, because you can't just. Because that's and the smarter ones are able to use that pricing as kind of these embargo, right? Embargoes of freight, et cetera, to try and do that. So does the concept of dynamic or live pricing come up? Is that something that we could see in the future?
Yeah, I think, just my own opinion, not directly working on any dynamic pricing with carriers. That's the perfect fit for general blanket pricing, right? Just have all the carrier controlled dials behind the scenes, turn it up, turn it down, just based on, their day-to-day, week-to-week changing network needs. I'm looking more with Rate Hero. It's more at, RFPs and annual contracted.
Gotcha. More period specific and not live update type of thing.
Yep. So I'm thinking more an account at a time versus really that net, that catch-all of what the dynamic pricing is turning into is more for the shipment at a time transactional stuff.
Right. The transactional. Right. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
It's fun.
So dude, look at that, 23 minutes. Poof, goes by. And I tell you, this stuff geeks me out. Now I've been speaking about nothing but LTL for about 3 hours in the last 2 days. And I'll tell you who I was talking to. Well, you'll see it on one of the things. It's a phenomenal interview. I can't wait for you to see it. Almost as good as this one. Almost as good as this one. I'll tell you, but you'll love
not cut that out of this.
I'm not. No, I don't cut anything out of this.
If it's LTL, it's probably a friend of mine.
Could be. But listen, man, I really appreciate you coming on. So these events that you have are not for people to just come and attend and watch, right? It's like you said, it's a summer camp, learning, interactive. Everybody who's there is basically a participant or a speaker and a listener and a collaborator, right? This is not like going to Manifest in Vegas.
No, it's not a show. It's not a show, and it's not a, hey, I'm going to attend this just to get some meetings and hang out in the lobby.
Yeah.
We'll kick you out of the damn lobby. It is, you're in the room. And that's why I priced it kind of high as a barrier to entry. I do work with people on the price 1-to-1, but I don't want, a bunch of, I won't even name categories, but like I want people that are invested in the LTL industry.
Yeah, you're going to come there, you're going to learn, but you're going to contribute too. You're going to be invested in this. But yeah,
that's what I'm proud about with it. Like the two we've had already, in both events, everyone in the room at one point or time has spoken, has like from the seat, or from the stage. They've contributed in some way. And then, I was looking at the stats on this one that's coming up. Basically, both times now, about half of the people are repeat offenders or attenders, I guess.
Yeah,
half are new, and that's been the trend for now all three events. And it's really, there's no shippers, so there's no like there. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I've never had the decision to let them in or not, because none have signed up, and I think that's a good thing. It's always a third carrier executive or owners. It's a third 3PL executive or owners or leaders, and then it's a third LTL technology company. So
fantastic.
Navix has been there since the start, auditing software, TMS companies, my guy Tate up in Canada building a rating engine for carriers called Pallet. He'll be coming for his second one. I've actually got some friends that I partner with in France, Open Pricer. They help all these huge European parcel and freight companies with pricing optimization software. They're coming to do a demo. So it's very much, there's several Canadian carriers that come down. Polaris, Groupe Morneau is a great little Quebec carrier. So yeah, it's a good international mix, but specifically LTL operators, sellers, and technologists.
Love it. I love it. I love it. So where do people go to learn more for the next one if they want to get in here and be participants?
Anything to do with that is on the website, understandltl.com, or reach out to me, directly. I'm pretty easy to find. And then anything on the Rate Hero side is ratehero.io is where we live there.
Excellent stuff, my friend. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good chatting. See you.
Peace and love.